Hello, everyone. We're gonna start pretty soon, maybe like 5 to 7 minutes. Just waiting for uh, everybody to filter in. Want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get here before we start. So hold tight, and we'll start soon. Thanks. Hello, everyone. It's 1:05, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started over here. Thank you for joining us for our webinar entitled Pricing Bike Share. My name is Ted Graves. I'm the Bike Share Program Manager at NACTO. I also have here with me Kate Villenier, who is the Bike Share Program Director. And we are joined by Claudia Setubal, who works at Bicycle Transit Systems, who is the operator of Philadelphia's Indego bike share system. So I'm going to give a brief presentation to start and cover some of our work at NACTO, and then Claudia will go ahead and give a presentation on their experiences over in Philadelphia. We anticipate having about 15 or 20 minutes for questions, and we ask that you use the question dialog box. You can submit your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll hold them until the end, and we'll answer them roughly in order. So please use the question box to communicate. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to talk about NACTO's work looking into bike share pricing and how to use that to improve equity for bike share in general and low-income people. And so our second practitioner's paper looked at this, and pricing really matters. And so we looked at changing pricing structures. A lot of time has been focused on cash access, subsidies, and options for the unbanked. We wanted to know if those efforts were working and what else might move the needle. And one of the main takeaways that we found was that steep price subsidies often did not dramatically change the profile of annual users in most cities, though in a number of cases it provided access for some. And that the lack of credit cards varies significantly, or the unbanked varies significantly by place to place and neighborhood to neighborhood, and that in some cases some things might need to be addressed first before these cash issues or the methods for reaching the unbanked. So pricing does matter, and people do ride to save money. People who are lower income ride more to save money, found from Capital Bike Share's 2014 annual user survey. The lowest income bracket that they had, less than $50,000, was 36% more likely to say that they joined in order to save money on transportation compared to people who are $150,000 or higher in household income. So it's clear that this is a means for people to save money on transportation, and people do know it, the people who use it. And bike share is very, very cheap compared to other transportation options, particularly other public transportation options or motor vehicles. So this is a really important thing to keep in mind. However, there is a sticker shock aspect, and this is something that has been found in focus groups in Philadelphia and other places, where the upfront cost of something like $150 or even $80 seems pretty steep, but people found that the rough monthly cost, which is often in the range of $10 to $25, is much more digestible for a variety of reasons. One of which is that we found that within the context of transit, low-income riders tend to use short-term passes such as 7-day passes much more frequently than higher-income riders. And this is likely because of the need to have more control over their cash flow and the ability to plan better in smaller quantities of money. And we see that in general services are available in monthly installments. Your transit card, at least the highest option, is in monthly installments, but also gyms, cell phones, car payments, all of that. So why not bike share, especially if this is the case that the cash flow option and the sticker price is an influence. We've also found that monthly billing may increase use. Research from the Harvard Business Journal and Berkeley Economics Department on gym memberships found two things. One, that the price signals, or the fact that people see that they're getting charged monthly, makes them motivated to get their money's worth, and so they notice this and they more consistently used gym memberships. And they also found that people were more likely to renew if they were paying in monthly installments, again, partially because they were using it more consistently and they were reminded of this fact. And what we found, in fact, is that in the past year or so, there's been a lot of movement in the field of monthly pricing options, largely spearheaded by Indego, who started with just monthly pricing options and continues to do so as an equity strategy. And more systems are doing this either as their only option or as part of their toolbox or suite of options. So for example, Healthy Ride in Pittsburgh started with only a monthly. Grid in Phoenix started with only a monthly, as do most other SOBI systems. They have at least some monthly option. And even Divvy and New York City, City Bike, have introduced monthly options and very recently foregrounded the monthly prices. So now they lead with monthly prices and then say, for example, or pay $155 a year and receive a 14% discount. And so this is perhaps an indication of the fact that people are moving towards this. But in addition to pricing it correctly, people also need to know what it costs, because people learn about the pricing or just bike share in general from particular sources, and you find it across bike share systems. So in Indego, when right before they launched, or immediately after they launched, they found that the majority of people learned about Indego via seeing the station kiosks, and then the second one was family and friends. And in fact, 5 months later in their follow-up, they saw that the seen station kiosks jumped up to 86% of people saying that's how they learned about it primarily. And this is 58% higher than the next, which was newspaper online, closely followed by friends and family. And this is also true for Capital Bike Share. And actually, as the system matured, they saw slight increases in people saying that they learned about it from station kiosks, perhaps as they had more and more kiosks. And so something that was important about that fact is that the pricing information on station kiosks needs to be really clear in order for people to understand what the pricing is. If people are learning from station kiosks, then the decals that tell you how much things cost need to be extremely tight and communicate these options, because when people don't understand how much it costs, a lot of times the misinformation leads them to think that it's not a good deal, when in fact it's extremely cheap, as we talked about, as I mentioned before. And so marketing also matters for the same reason. In the same follow-up survey mentioned previously by Indego, they found that not that many people on the street really knew about how or what Indego costs. And when they did say that they knew what Indego costs, they still didn't actually have correct information. Only 31% of total respondents said that they knew anything about what Indego costs. And of those people, only 52% actually knew that it cost a certain amount and it was that amount per month or to walk up. Whereas some people only knew the dollar value, but they didn't know what that corresponded to. And if people think it's $15 a ride, for example, there's a big problem there, and people are going to communicate that information to their friends and family. As mentioned previously, it's one of the primary ways that people learn about it. And the perception of this transportation option is going to be skewed towards something that's simply not true. And in 2012, Emerson University in Boston did a survey and found actually that the cost of Hubway was not the factor that limited students from using the service, but rather the confusion and inefficient methods of making the payment. So there was a lot of confusion around the pricing as well as how to make the payments, and this had an impact more than the price itself. And so moving over to discounted passes, one of the really important things to remember is that they don't sell themselves, and we've seen this in multiple cities, in cities where there's been success and cities where there's been less success. So Boston has been one of the most successful cities in getting uptake of their subsidized passes. Something like 18% of their users are subsidized members. And a lot of this was related to the fact that they have deep and multiple community partners rather than relying on one or two. And they also made it extremely easy to sign up. You can either go to their one of 5 or 6 locations where people can sign up, or they can just simply call a number, and the income requirement is based on the honor system, which they don't believe has been an issue in terms of people abusing the system. And another stat is that they found that 64% of subsidized members are on public assistance, and that the ridership is in line with what they see in the general population. In fact, for males, it's higher average number of trips, the subsidized members, than the non-subsidized members. Chicago's experience has been similar in terms of marketing. They had an extremely big marketing presence, and they consistently sold out of their memberships. And that marketing presence and the announcement from the mayor and that sort of thing was a really big push for them, as was the fact that they have a lot of stations that are available in lower income neighborhoods, which is another key component. And so many other places have had a hard time selling passes, partially because of their difficulties with outreach, partially because of some of the lack of partnerships or the types of partnerships, among other reasons. And Claudia is also going to talk about Philadelphia's new discount program in her presentation, so I'll leave that to her in a little bit. And the last thing is reaching the unbanked. So 92.3% of Americans have a savings account, while 72.1% have a bank account. And so it's often the case that this is extremely uneven. In a lot of southern cities and Rust Belt cities, these numbers are substantially higher. And it also varies from city to city in terms of whether the neighborhoods see drastic differences. For example, in Chicago, the South Side is far more unbanked than the higher income North Side, whereas in New York, it's a little bit more even. It should be noted that in Boston, 92% of subsidized members were purchased with a credit card. And Indego 30 Cash, which Philadelphia has implemented, is one of the first comprehensive cash systems where people get a code and then go to 7-Eleven or Family Dollar to redeem that code with cash. They have seen that it has been hitting their target audience, which is lower income and less white, which is to say also closer to Philly's overall racial demographic compared to other users. But it should be noted that 30% have been renewing with credit cards, which at once is indicative, but also might indicate something that is useful about cash, where people don't necessarily feel comfortable. They just want to try it out, so they don't feel comfortable putting on their credit card. But cash allows them to say, okay, well, I'll test it out. There's very little risk to me. However, this has been only 3% of users, so these 3% of users may be important, and it may really provide access for them, and it might have an impact on the overall perception of the system. But in terms of the broad impact, it might not have the same, this cash aspect might not have the same impact as people anticipate. So keeping in mind that it might be more important to address certain other issues if you have extremely limited capacity in order to improve equity, but that it's also potentially worthwhile if you do have the capacity, depending on where you are. So that is the end of my presentation. Right before I hand it over to Claudia, I just wanted to mention that if you want more about this and all other things bike share and equity, the Better Bike Share Partnership Conference is coming up June 22nd to 24th. It's going to be 2 days, and it's going to be a lot of information on bike share and equity, pulling in not just bike share people, but also people coming from a diverse range of equity and community engagement spaces in order to really collaborate and bring heads together. And also the NACTO Designing Cities Conference a little bit further out. There will definitely be plenty of talk about bike share, and that's September 26th through 29th in Seattle. In terms of the Better Bike Share Partnership Conference, you can sign up for it on betterbikeshare.org, and NACTO is, of course, and always NACTO.org. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Claudia.
I just wanted to unmute myself. Let me share my screen with you all. Right. Chad, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So I am excited to talk to you guys about some of the work that we've been doing here in Philly around pricing, and specifically a little bit about the cash membership and our new access pass. So I also have my colleague and friend Aaron Ritz is on the line. So he actually works for the city of Philadelphia, unlike me, so he can jump in and correct me on anything that I get wrong. But I might call on Aaron to talk a little bit about the early days of deciding on this price structure that we've ended up with, just in case, because I think that helps fill in the story of why it makes sense for an equity purpose. So just a little background about Indego for those of you who don't know. We launched in April 2015, so just about a year and a month ago. We originally had 700 bikes and 70 stations. Now we just had our first expansion up to 100 stations and 1,000 bikes. And that expansion has very purposely gone into more low-income neighborhoods. We are owned by the City of Philadelphia. Our equipment is B-Cycle, operated by Bicycle Transit Systems, sponsored by Independence Blue Cross, and a good chunk of our equity funding does come from the Better Bike Share Partnership. And I don't have the logo on here, but a lot of the expansion funding has come from the William Penn Foundation with regards to putting stations near parks and waterfront. The pricing system that we have, and I'll show it to you guys in a second, it was on one of Ted's slides. But when thinking about pricing, a lot of the goals that the city had were to, obviously from an equity perspective, reduce the cost barrier to entry, like Ted mentioned. It was really important to make sure that people didn't have sticker shock when they first saw the system, so an annual pass tends to deter people from seeing the affordability of bike share straight on. So that was the first impulse, is to make it affordable. We wanted to simplify the fee system. All things that research has shown, as again Ted mentioned, are important to make sure that people want to purchase it and want to participate in the system. If they're confused, they're less likely to feel comfortable putting their money into something that they don't know if it will trick them into spending more. The city was really invested in mirroring transit pricing. So whenever we're describing the types of passes that we have, we often compare it to SEPTA, which is our local transit authority. So SEPTA has monthly passes, which are trans passes, and they also have tokens because it's Philadelphia, and we are definitely in the 21st century. And the tokens are single ride options. So our system, our pricing system mirrors that. We have a monthly pass and we have single ride options. So it makes it really easy to explain it to people what the different pricing options are when we call them trans passes and tokens. We are eventually going to be getting rid of those tokens this summer apparently, but we do still have tokens. We also, I think it was important to have a consistent revenue stream. Instead of having all of your money come in up front when somebody signs up, you have people that continue to pay month after month. And the revenue mirrors more of what the ridership actually looks like. And we also found it really important to have a cash payment option, which is where I come in. So some background, I'm an access manager seated with the operator, but my position is funded by the Better Bike Share Partnership with the explicit goal of creating a cash payment system and of supporting the equity work from an operator perspective, so from a systems level perspective. So a lot of the work that I do is related to pricing and customer service and sort of systems level setup and trying new options for equity. And I'm going to talk about a few of those today. So here's our pricing. We have the monthly pass. We have a flex pass, which I like to think of as people who already have a bike pass, which is basically just giving people more time over the walk-up trip. And then the walk-up trip, which is $4 an hour. So, Aaron, if you're there, do you want to jump in and talk about anything related to the selection of those particular price points?
So I have made Aaron a presenter. He should be able to speak, hopefully.
Should he want to? I don't think he's got the audio pin. That's okay. I'll keep talking. If you feel compelled to jump in at any point, Aaron, by all means. Okay, so I believe that, so when you look at this, $15 a month, we hear from everybody, oh, that's not too bad, that's not too bad. Then when you actually multiply it by 12, it's a little bit pricier. It's $180 a month, which is more expensive than most bike share systems out there for an annual membership. So if we had gone with an annual membership, there would have certainly been a higher sticker shock level. I think this is premised on the idea of people obviously not always renewing during the winter months. So we did see, a good chunk of our pass holders did remain with us during the winter months. We definitely did see some drop off, but they're starting to come back now, and we're getting closer to peak pricing or peak numbers of members again. And by the way, the reason I use the word member and the word pass holder interchangeably is because in our system, we call everybody a member, but we made a conscious decision of changing the word that we use for public consumption to pass and pass holder, because the word membership connotes some kind of belonging and in-group, and it seemed to confuse a lot of people when we were trying to speak about the passes from a transit option perspective. So it was important for us to transition the wording to be more pass oriented. I still use memberships because that's what our system says whenever I look somebody up. So I tend to use them a little bit more interchangeably, but to the outside world, these are passes. So on to the next one. So cash payment. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, the big challenge with creating cash payment is the technology side of things. So I came in about 6 months pre-launch to try to think about what kinds of solutions we could figure out. And we looked at a lot of different things. We looked at prepaid cards. We looked at doing some kind of partnership with the library or with grocery stores where we have payment locations. So some of the challenges that we came up against were that we did need something that could somehow integrate with our technology. We have a B-cycle system, and you can't just sign people up in the back end. You can't just download a CSV sheet and plug people in as members. They have to go in through the front end of the system. So it was difficult for us to figure out a good way to do that technological integration. We also really, we were beholden to the grant to have a wide geographic reach. So we had to have a location for payment within 0.75 miles of each BBSD station. And the BBSD stations are the ones that are considered to be in social equity zones, also in areas where census shows lower income. And we had 18 of those. So that would have necessitated, and they're sort of all around the edges of the system. So that would have necessitated something like close to 18 payment locations. We needed something that could scale up as the system grew, and we needed to do something to address security concerns like what happens if you have a cash payment system at the library and then the library is just holding on to all this cash that they don't feel comfortable holding on to. So there are a lot of liability issues around that. So in looking at that,
Claudia, we have a request to just slow down a little bit because apparently we're having a sound issue. It's a bit muffled.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. We just wanted to make sure that everybody can hear. So thanks.
Okay, I get carried away and I talk quickly. Okay, so in thinking about how we want to develop a payment solution, it became pretty clear that we had to separate the process of having a place where people could go to sign up in their neighborhood and talk to a real person from the process of making a payment. Because one required sort of human interaction and information, and the other required cash exchange. And the people who were community organizations that could provide the human element often did not have the capacity to provide the cash processing element. So we came up, through a lot of research, we found Pay Near Me, which is, they describe themselves as an electronic payment network. And they are, they're located in California, and they work with a lot of other government agencies. They work with Greyhound. You can pay in cash for Spotify through them. And the way they work is they have partnerships with three major businesses, 7-Eleven, Family Dollar, and Ace Cash Express. And in those locations, you can bring a barcode from PayNearMe and make a payment in cash. So for us, the technical integration of that just meant that instead of a credit card payment option at the end of our sign-up process, we had a PayNearMe payment option placed in at the end of our sign-up process. So instead of putting in a credit card at the end, you received a barcode, and then you go and make that payment in cash at one of those locations. And we did a manual integration for the first year, and we are very excited to have a full integration with eCycle coming this summer, because it will make everyone's life much happier. And I can go into detail on that if anyone has specific questions, but I want to keep talking. So here's an example of what our barcode looks like. We have this Pay in Cash button on our website, and then this is a map of in red on this map are all of our station locations, including our recently expanded stations. And the green dots are all the 7-Eleven, Family Dollars, and Ace locations in Philadelphia. So you'll see that while we're not 100% covered, we do have pretty substantial coverage in the areas where we have bike share stations. So that's pretty exciting. And then the blue is what we consider social equity zones. We were really excited about this cash option. It was exactly the same as the Indego 30 option, $15 a month, same usage fees, so on and so forth. It sort of answered the question of like, is credit card alone a barrier? And we had a fair number of signups, but it wasn't quite as popular as we had hoped. And we did get some pushback from some communities when we would go in and say, this is so exciting, we have this option. And they would say, that's great, but we're on fixed income. $15 a month for something that we don't think we actually need as a necessity is still a lot of money for us. What else can you do? And the response to that, after about a year of really sort of seeing the system play out and talking to a lot of community partners, was to find a simple way of providing a low-income path option. And what we came up with was what we call the Access Path, which is based on the EBT card that folks use to pay for SNAP benefits and to receive Medicaid and other disability benefits here in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, it looks like this little blue card with yellow writing across it. And it's, in Pennsylvania, it's called the Pennsylvania Access Card. Other states might have different versions of it. But we were able to come up with a way where you can enter your access card on our website, enter the number on the card, and it has a certain combination of digits that we could tell whether or not it's a legitimate number or not, and cross-check it against whether it's been entered or not. And that is the authorization that allows you to then have access to the option of selecting the Access Path. The Access Pass is only $5 a month as opposed to $15. It's the same structure as the Indego 30. It's still a monthly pass. It still allows you for 1 hour of unlimited ride, but it's $5 instead of $15, and the usage fees are $2 instead of $4. Because that was also something that came up over and over and over in our meetings, is that a lot of the community members that would like to use Indego want to use it for recreational purposes, and they do want to use it for more than just an hour. And while we don't want to encourage that, we don't want to make it seem like we're trying to trick people into paying more money than they signed up for. So we did want to also reduce that usage fee. And this is the brochure that we give out that also gives detailed information about how to sign up. We also have a cash option associated with the Access Pass. And we have a partnership with KeySpots, which I'll talk about in a second, with regards to digital access. Just to touch a little bit on what Ted was saying, is that people aren't going to just find out about this on their own. Well, in our case, we have. Especially the Access Pass, we got a lot of free media placement from our original press release, and people really heard about it from just the social media and sort of putting it on our website, and having had a press conference with the mayor. We did get a lot of articles written about it. But we are preparing, we've only had the Access Pass for about a month now, and we are preparing a full strategy for rolling it out further. We have some radio ads that just started airing. We're partnering with a local nonprofit called Outreach that provides discounted tickets to museums for people who have access cards, and so they're adding this to sort of what they promote. We have a TV commercial that will be mentioning access. We've included access in our general brochure as one of our payment options. So now we have 4 payment options. We're doing a number of pop-ups at farmers markets in partnership with the Food Trust, which is a local nonprofit, and making sure to set up specifically at farmers markets where the highest number of SNAP dollars are redeemed, so that we can be reaching folks who are already using their cards in a specific context. We have staff who will be going out and doing pop-up events, also near benefits locations. So if people are coming in and out to use their benefits, we'll have literature for them nearby. We're going to be working with partners such as the Hunger Coalition and other places that help people with their benefits to be able to give them information about Indego as well. And then we have a community ambassador who spreading this information to their neighborhoods. We'll be at community events. And this is a picture of one of our pilot programs with a group called PEC. They're a local community-based organization, and they have a program called Community Connector, which is young people that go out and distribute information in their community. So we're putting them on Indego bikes and giving them access card information to go out and give that information out to their community and have these very highly visible bikes that they're on. Just real quick, I know I've been talking for a while, but technology is a huge barrier because you have to go online to sign up for Indego. So we partnered with the Key Spots, which are a network of computer labs here in Philadelphia, and they're basically in all the neighborhoods that our stations are in. And we recently finished the first cohort of a group of a pilot program called Digital Skills and Bicycle Thrills, which is a 4-week class about Indego that, while it's teaching people about biking and about bike safety and about how to use Indego, is also walking them through basic digital skills. So this is our graduation from the first cohort, and it was hugely successful. We were very happy with how it went, and we're doing a second cohort in June. Just because I know everybody likes some numbers, these are some of the numbers that I pulled this morning for Indego 30 Cash and the Access Pass. So for Indego 30 Cash, we've had about 320 individuals sign up, and that's over the course of a year and a month. And in a month with the Access Pass, we've had 117 credit card passes and 12 cash passes. And then between the full year of Indego 30 and the most recent Indego Access Pass, we've had 610 cash payments through Pay Near Me. And most of those were about $15, some of them were lower. And just one note, when we're talking about all this, there have been some challenges with keeping good data on this because of the manual process. And it's just that what we define as a member traditionally for credit card has been once you sign up, you've made your payment, you're a member. There's like a definitive point that we can say this is when your membership started. But how do we do that for cash? Because there are several steps in the journey to becoming a member when you're paying in cash. You have the point at which you sign up and receive your barcode, but we don't send you anything until you've actually paid. And there are people who fall through the cracks and sign up that don't actually pay. And we do our best to follow up with them, but sometimes people just kind of want to see what the system looks like. And once you pay, you have to wait to receive your key to actually be able to use the system. And then once you receive your key, you have to actually use it for your membership to become active in our system. So we tend to count active members. So this number right here, 12 cash passes, is active cash passes. But we have more than that of people in our system that maybe are somewhere in this process. Maybe they've paid and received their key, but they just haven't gotten around to riding yet because it's ranged for like 2 months. And then there are the folks, as Ted mentioned, that have added a credit card, but they're still classified under Indego 30 Cash. So with our integration, we'll be able to address some of these issues and count people as pending or as not pending, but it's been tricky to be able to, like, even when Ted and Kate and NACTO folks were writing the paper and they asked me, how many cash members do you have? And I was like, well, that is a very interesting question. So just to shed some light on why that is. So that's all I have to say about the very exciting world of Philadelphia's cash payments and access pass situation. Please feel free to reach out. I am happy to talk about any and all of these things. And if you have any questions, happy to hear them.
Great. Thanks so much, Claudia. So now we're going to open it up for questions. Again, please use the question box. I will read out any questions that we get, either for me or for Claudia, and we will answer them. So please, fire away. So I have a question for you, Claudia. Would you be able to talk about, oh, no, we got a question right here. So Rebecca Noop, sorry, hope I'm saying your name right. She says that the biggest portion of the seminar seems to be focused on low-income riders rather than general pricing strategy. Will there be more discussion on general pricing strategies soon? Kate, would you like to address that?
So part of the approach that NACTO has been taking thus far is to really focus on the people for whom we're having the hardest time reaching. But I think a lot of the sort of lessons learned in terms of reaching people who are difficult to reach can be applied pretty broadly to general pricing strategy. So for example, you know, when we're talking about monthly plans, it's not just low-income folks who, you know, want things on a monthly basis. It's sort of how everybody budgets. You know, your rent, your mortgage, et cetera. All of that happens on that monthly basis. And so thinking about how people just across the board respond to pricing, the idea of doing things on a monthly basis and really marketing it as that monthly number, which is something, you know, as Ted mentioned, that gyms know really well. You know, every gym plan in, you know, in the country right now is really touts itself as, you know, a $15 a month or a $30 a month or what have you. You know, that's sort of a way to reach a wider audience while at the same time remembering that there are people that we need to look out for as well.
So thank you for that question. Next, we have a question from Jay Decker. We have, how do you handle the question of not having a discounted annual pass? $15 a month equates to $180, so it's expensive relative to other systems. Claudia, do you know if you all have had any questions about having a discounted, I guess, well, you didn't have an annual. Were people concerned about that, or?
Yeah. So there weren't a huge number of people that were terribly upset about it because our pass is cancel anytime. Like I had mentioned, we did have a number of people who canceled it over the winter and just re-upped as the weather got nicer again. So if you think about it, if you have about 7 months of nice weather, then it's actually, you know, under $100 for keeping the pass active for that time. So I think there were a few sort of like really bike-share, transit-oriented people that were like expressed some outrage early on, and then they overwhelmingly had died down, and it's been a pretty positive response because, like I said, I think that most people respond to the initial, oh, it's only $15, as a positive. And Ted, while I had before, I just wanted to mention something that Erin pointed out to me that I neglected to mention in my presentation, is that a lot of the advertising for something like our Access Pass has been done through public service announcements. We have partners in radio through whom we do advertisement for through our general system, and they allow us to do public service spots for free to advertise options such as the low income, or such as the Access Pass, such as like events that we have, even digital skills and bicycle trails. We did a PSA for that. So that's, you don't need a huge budget for that. They have to have a certain number of PSAs that they do, and so having a relationship with the radio station might help with a really low budget.
Great, thank you. And the next question is from Henry Dunbar. He asked, has NACTO done any research on single-use fares? And the answer is, well, we haven't personally done any explicit research on it. What we found in focus groups, including Philadelphia's focus groups, is that people are focused on the cost of a trip, and they conceive of using bike share sort of like like transit. So they compare it to transit, and they say that it shouldn't cost substantially more than transit. That's sort of the way that people have thought about it. And so in that respect, at least in the case of these focus groups, it might be the case that single rides are easier for people to wrap their head around as opposed to day, which tend to favor visitors. I don't know if you, Claudia, have anything to say about your specific choice to go with single ride passes?
I think it was really premised on the transit idea and trying to mirror transit. I think that it was an experiment that was focused on how let's see what happens with these single ride passes. And what we found is that they do largely get used by tourists or by people who are using them for the first time. But we also did find one of our motivations for going with something like the Access Pass is that at our BBSP stations, the low-income stations, the split between number of people using a membership versus number of people using a walk-up pass was much higher than at other neighborhood stations. So we were seeing that the same question of like lower barrier to entry, $4 is still cheaper than $15. People are using $4, the $4 walk-up instead of buying a membership. So we wanted to price the $5 subsidized membership competitively with the walk-up pricing to make sure that people are using the most economically optimal path.
Great, thanks. And from Mitch Bars, we have a question. Nobody's a member of the bus or train. Why are we so on membership models for bikes? Why not pay by the trip, which seems to be what most people want? And I think that was addressed a little bit in the previous question, and to a certain extent also in the concept of monthly passes. So I think that there is something to be said for paying by the trip, and I think that, as Claudia mentioned, Indego is moving away from the concept of membership and into passes, again, like transit. So a lot of people do a monthly pass is much like a transit pass, and it really does move that towards the concept of transit, whereas a membership model is slightly different. In terms of having an annual membership, I think that to a certain extent there is ambiguity around cash flow, in addition to encouraging people to use it more frequently. I think Kate also has something to say about that.
The other thing, though, to keep in mind in this conversation is that bike share and cycling in general has a sort of a struggle for legitimacy in a way that transit does not always have. And so one of the benefits to not paying by trip is that it allows people to take substantially more spontaneous trips, and in terms of being able to then go back to politicians and other electeds and sort of naysayers, the press, et cetera, and say, lots of people are riding. I think things that encourage people to take large quantities of trips because they're not paying for each individual one, because it's literally, something that they could walk but are choosing to take the bike because it's already a sunk cost, is actually a good thing for bike share as an industry as a whole. Those sort of trips that are too short to really warrant really needing to take a bike, they're 5 blocks, they're 10 blocks. But you might do it because you've already paid for your month or you're paid for your year. And that's useful when you're talking later to people about, this many people took trips, people are using these all the time. When you want that sort of high visibility of trips so that people think that your service, your program is something that is being substantially used and not something that they see as sort of, oh yeah, well we got this bike share program and well I never see it and I never see anybody on it.
Thanks, Kate. And so for our next question, we have one from Jay Decker, and it's how are the subsidized memberships funded? I think that different places have different models, but maybe, Claudia, you could talk about the specific funding model for Indego right now?
Sure. So the Access Pass is, we're able to forego the revenue for it through the Better Bike Share Partnership. We do have a substantial grant that the City of Philadelphia is using to try new experiments, but we realize that funding is actually ending in a year. So one of the things that we're looking at for sustainability purposes is some kind of sponsorship model associated with those types of memberships, in which either our title sponsor, Independence Blue Cross, we could potentially see if they would be interested in subsidizing that. But we've also had a lot of interest from folks who want to support the system and who, the same folks who were frustrated that they couldn't buy the annual membership because they wanted to put their money and throw it at the system and also get a better deal. We've had people say, can I buy somebody else's membership? So I think there is potential, and this is something we've only just begun to think about, but there is some potential to have people who are very invested in the system buy a membership for somebody else and subsidize the cost of the other $10 that that person isn't paying for. But really, for the most part, it's foregone revenue for folks who wouldn't otherwise have been in the system and who are largely using stations that are not as high use as some of the stations towards the center of the city. So the hope is that what we'll be doing with this is both offering a subsidized cost, but also activating stations outside of our immediate high-density zones.
Great, thanks. And I think that we have two questions that are actually, fortunately, quite similar and a little bit of a follow-up to that a little bit. But what we have from Jay Decker and Paul DeMaio, what is a single ride bus or train fare in Philly? And was there a thought about making it the same price or cheaper as that to promote mode shift? Paul asked similarly if you were looking at reducing the cost of the walk-up to get to a more transit-like fare point.
So a SEPTA token in Philadelphia is $250 or $225, and it's going to go up to $250 with the new payment technology. I think Aaron would be the best person to answer this if he happens to be able to get back on the line, but I don't see him, so I will take a stab at it. So I think the thought was we didn't want to necessarily take away from SEPTA with the pricing. I think it was actually purposely made to not compete because SEPTA is one of our partners, and we, I think they did not want to directly impact SEPTA's bottom line, but also still have the walk-up trip be a revenue generator. So at $4, they are overpriced in terms of, comparatively with SEPTA. But oh, Aaron, you're on. I see you.
Great. Can you hear me?
How are they doing? Yes.
Oh, that's even better. I was yelling, and hi everyone. So Claudia is pretty much Claudia's done a great job of explaining where we were coming from, even from positions before she was on the bike share team. So good job, Claudia. I think one of the considerations that we had was to, as Claudia mentioned earlier, to really drive people to the monthly membership, and that was a focus of ours. We wanted to encourage people to purchase the monthly membership, and I don't have percentage comparisons, but we really did reach our initial member projections earlier than many peer CDs have. I think we hit our year one membership projections a fair bit earlier. We had a lot of passes sold before there was even a system in the ground, and I think that was largely attributable to the low cost of entry at $15, and also the fact that people saw a value in being members over the walk-up pricing.
Great, thanks. I think we have time for just one last question, which we have here, and then we're going to wrap it up. From Christopher Corral, he asked, has Indego considered partnering with PayPal as another option for low-income users and also providing a cash-free option?
I'm a little confused about what is meant by cash-free. But as far as partnering with PayPal, we're pretty happy with how PayNearMe is going now, because we are able to cover the city to a very large extent, as I mentioned in the map. So we actually are focusing on finishing this integration with eCycle and having that done and accessible, because we were one of the first bike share customer for PayNearMe. We have a really good deal with them in terms of the percentage cut that they take. It's fairly low and comparable to what the fees would be for a credit card transaction. So we're pretty happy with how PayNearMe is going, and I think that would be something that we might consider in the future once we are in a place where all of the integrations are done. There is no more manual work. But in the meantime, it hasn't been something that we've looked at yet. But I'd be interested to see if other cities do look into it and have successful experiences.
Great, thanks.
This is Aaron again.
Oh, hi, Aaron. Nope, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I think that I'm sure that many on the call will agree that the area for the biggest development in the world of bike share is really in the software and integration. I know we've had any number of these conversations with peers at NACTO and at the NABSA conference, and I think that as different mobile platforms evolve, there's going to be a lot more opportunities to reach people, even those without bank accounts or traditional financial instruments, and that's certainly something I'm sure we're all looking forward to.
All right, thanks so much, everybody, for being on the call, and thanks to our panelists and participants, Claudia and Aaron, as well as Kate. We hope that you will continue this discussion, such as on the NACTO Bike Share listserv. Sounds like there's still a lot of interest. So we will also be disseminating the recording of this call over the listserv in the coming days, so that people can share it widely, share it to some of your colleagues that might not have been able to make it. And we ask that you email us with any questions that you have. We'd be happy to chat. And we also encourage you, once again, to look into or participate in the Better Bike Share Partnership Conference. That's betterbikeshare.org, or the NACTO or the NACTO Designing Cities Conference. And just to answer a quick question here, the slides will be available for download, will be included along with the recording as slides. So absolutely. With that, unless anybody else has anything to say, I'm gonna end this and say thanks again. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend. Have a great long weekend, and see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.